Doo-doo-dee. It's Nandi!
Hello friends. In perhaps one of the worst kept secrets in a while, Tacticus has done a crossover event with Dawn of War 4, and 2 new characters have been released. In this video, we'll go over Cyrus. I normally don't do lore bits these days for the characters, but it feels weird to ignore it given the scale and importance of Dawn of War 4 within the 40k fandom. Cyrus was first introduced in the PC game Dawn of War 2, where he served as a scout sergeant for the Blood Ravens Space Marine chapter, defined by his stealth, infiltration, and long-range combat expertise. While he didn't appear in Dawn of War 3, he looks set to be one of the main protagonists in Dawn of War 4, which makes his arrival in Tacticus all the more timely. The Blood Ravens are a lesser-known Space Marine chapter, perhaps best characterized by their obsession with ancient knowledge and relics, and their infamous habit of acquiring said relics from allies and enemies alike. That reputation feels particularly apt given the recent introduction of mythic relics to Tacticus. If you're here for a 15-second summary, Cyrus is an assassin-type ranged character. His active does some bolter damage, allows ranged attacks to ignore enemy armor, and allows him to move again. His passive drops a mine behind after he moves. He's likely to be a PvP-focused character with some value in Horde mode too. Thanks as always to my Patreons and YouTube members for their support. Cyrus is an epic unlock with epic battle pass. I almost always commend Snowprint's art department on the model and animations, and I feel like they have taken extra care and attention for these more iconic characters within the 40k universe. Cyrus has 3 traits: Camouflage, Infiltrate, and Suppressive Fire. Stats and abilities are at max epic rather than max legendary after popular request. He has a 3-hit bolter melee and ranged attack, the latter with a range of 3. Talon Tacticus Ambassador and Friend has helpfully done some analytics to help me create this radar chart for stats. Cyrus has a weaker defensive profile which reflects his role on the battlefield. His damage stats are impressive against low armor targets, but less so against high armor due to the pierce ratio on his attacks. His active ability is called Strike from the Shadows. Cyrus does bolter damage to an enemy within 3 hexes and reduces its armor until the end of Cyrus's next turn. After using this ability, Cyrus can move again, kind of like how Calandus' active works. The passive ability, Haywire Mine, leaves behind a mine after Cyrus moves. That mine does blast damage at baseline, but a little bit of extra energy damage to mechanical enemies. The abilities seem straightforward at first glance, but let's look at the gameplay. The active is pretty straightforward. You can position yourself and take advantage of high ground if you want, attack the enemy with the active, and then that target has less armor against ranged attacks. They get a debuff showing the effect, and after using the active, Cyrus can move again. You can see how on the turn that Cyrus uses his active, he effectively puts down 3 mines on the battlefield. Speaking of mines, the passive is also straightforward. If Cyrus moves, then he leaves behind a mine. If an enemy steps onto it, the mine is destroyed and that enemy takes some damage, more if they are mechanical. The animation when they step on the mine is pretty cool, and it doesn't look like there is a maximum number that can be active on the battlefield. I'm not 100% sure on the logic for the placement of the mines if Cyrus doesn't move, but they appear to have similar rules for current game AI. That is to say, they will try and prioritize high ground hexes and avoid hexes with negative effects like barbed wire. The final thing to mention is that the mines are relatively easy to kill with splash damage, as shown here with the gameplay clip against Acadian Mortar team. Since both the abilities are damage based, now would be a good segue to math and graphs, and for me to call in Tacticus Ambassador and Friend, Talon, once again. It does have the ability to improve other ranged hits, but it's quite unimpressive on its own, and it looks even worse when we add in the 60% health boost from the Medicae buildings in Guild War. The passive is a bit better, at least from a damage point of view. The graph includes the extra damage against mechs, but the energy damage is very small and doesn't move the needle much, nor make Cyrus a mech killer. I suspect it's just a bit of flavor and reflects some stuff from the Dawn of War game. It still isn't super impressive, especially when it's relatively difficult to ensure your enemies step on the mines. The guild raid section of this video is brief. Only having 3 hits and abilities that don't really impact bosses means that Cyrus is not a raid character. Let's move on. Cyrus releases with the shared relic, the relic bolt pistol that is shared amongst other Imperial units. I think given the lore behind the Blood Ravens, he may get something pretty cool and flavoursome when the time comes, but we'll have to wait and see for the time being. Cyrus's Mythic Missions are listed on screen. they all seem reasonably straightforward. For mission 2, remember that the active lasts until the end of Cyrus's next turn, so he gets to benefit from it on his next normal ranged attack. Mythic Mission 4 can probably be done against Necrons in the campaign. Just block some melee Necrons with your character, build up mines, and then reposition the team such that the Necrons run onto the mines. From an LRE perspective, Cyrus is mainly valuable if you consider his mines as tools to effectively deal with multiple enemies per turn. The damage on the mines, however, is quite low. Cyrus has 4 points of interest in LRE. The bolter track is already overcrowded with Imperials, and there are lots of better options in my opinion. The camouflage track has some pretty terrible LRE options, but Cyrus would probably make the top 5 there. Him having ranged 3 is the biggest appeal when compared to other characters for this section. The infiltrate track also doesn't have a bunch of great choices. The Death Leaper and Pattermine are probably among the best, but again Cyrus probably makes the top 5 because of his range. Suppressive Fire is full of some generally weaker ranged units. Of them, you'd need Toth to tank, and Cyrus offers some extra damage through the mines. Am I excited to build him for LRE? Probably not, but if you have him and one of these requirements comes up, then Cyrus probably makes the team. I haven't listed the cutoffs for ability thresholds here since you can get those fairly easily on any Tacticus website. On screen here is the character summary in my usual infographic style. Thanks once more to Talent, Tacticus Ambassador and friend for his help. I'll leave this on screen for a bit for you to digest. We can conclude by assessing Cyrus's usability. Let's start with Horde modes. I know the mines are supposed to be great, but I don't find the damage good enough, and outside of the mines, he's essentially a range 3 damage dealer with mediocre stats. I think he's pretty average and have therefore given him a 2.5. What about War? Well, the biggest appeal is his movement 3, range 3 and suppressive fire. Ranged damage dealers, especially ones with a threat range of 6, are at a premium in this game. He is a good counter to Revas, but his active doesn't do quite enough damage to one-shot enemies, and the ability seems worse when stacked against enemies with a 60% health buff. I guess the reach is such that he can apply it to an enemy, run away, and still gain the benefit of the reduced armor on the following turn without really exposing himself to much risk, but I'm not super excited by the character or this particular active ability. I've given him a 3 here, but I would understand if that ends up being an underestimation in the long term. Finally, Raid. As we've covered, Cyrus doesn't have a raid kit, so he gets a 1. It is unusual for an epic battle pass character to be on this sort of power level, after we've had recent hits like Carrion and Dreer. Maybe there will be buffs down the line or a powerful relic. I mean, it happened for Titus, who is an iconic character in the universe, so all hope is not lost. I'll probably get the battle pass simply for nostalgia value anyway. I suppose one thing that I haven't covered yet, which I'll mention before I close, is the new Adeptus Astartes faction. It's not totally clear exactly what Snowprint intend to do here, but I suppose they are trying to find ways of introducing more iconic characters without doing a full faction. I wonder if they might be using this heading to include singletons from factions like Salamanders or Carcharodons. Okay, I'll maybe sign off there. I hope that was useful and you enjoy playing with Cyrus. Thanks as always to my Patreons and YouTube members for their support, and bye for now.